All right. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Johnny.
Hey, Kyle.
Hey, buddy. How's it going?
Going good, man. What about it? It's our very, very, very first episode of the Impodsters. I'm excited. We've had some technical difficulties in the past. We kind of worked through them. Got a little late start on this one. Thanks to Jeff. Thanks, Jeff. But man, we are here. I'm excited. And I'm just, to the people that are listening out there, I want to make sure that I make some commitments. And one of the things that I'm going to commit to is that, the sound ain't always going to be that great. The audio might be a little screwy. This is my first podcast, so we might fumble around a little bit. Not everything's going to be enlightening and eye-opening.
Is there a button there?
No, that's pretty much it.
All right. Promises.
All right, guys. So every episode, we're going to try a little something different. We're going to try to bring our own definition of the imposter syndrome. It means a lot of things. There's a lot of different definitions. There's some good ones. There's some bad ones. There's things that it does mean. And I've heard a lot of things that it doesn't mean to me. And so I'm going to tell you what I believe the best definition that I've found. And I actually have this in a presentation of mine that I do on imposter syndrome. And I believe it's from the Oxford English Dictionary. It's the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. Now, that's a mouthful. But you know what I really love about that one? Is it's very past tense. So it's not what you're feeling in the moment, which, sometimes that might be doubt. It might be extreme doubt. It might be full-on imposter syndrome. What I like about that definition is it's the inability to believe that your successes are deserved looking backwards. I've already achieved the thing. I've already done the thing. I've got the gold plaque on the wall, but I can't experience it that way. And to me, that is one of the better definitions of this. Is this true imposter syndrome, or is this just maybe a little bit of self-doubt? So tell me what you think about that. I mean, based on what you guys have heard, what are your thoughts? Kyle, I'll start it over to you. Give me a little thought on that.
Yeah, I think, and it's what's funny is you have to do a thing to get it. You know what I mean? Like imposter syndrome doesn't typically kick in when you're, living in your parents' basement and living in your sweatpants. You know what I mean? Like it's definitely, maybe you get it there, but we'll just say it's a very miniature version of it, if that's where you're getting imposter syndrome. But it's very synonymous with achievement and with people who achieve and people who strive. And it doesn't necessarily matter to what level, but if you're someone who strives, people with trauma too, and I relate to that, and we can get into that later when we get into our stories, but people who are driven by their trauma to succeed and achieve at high levels, this kicks in really early and easy. But one thing I like about what you're doing is that you're putting the vocabulary to it, because oftentimes we do experience these things and we think we're alone, and that just adds to it. You know what I mean? So having someone like you to be a Sherpa out there to say, this is the diagnosis and you're not alone, that actually in and of itself is a nice little pill for those that are early in that journey and not really recognizing how they're experiencing imposter syndrome. So not only do I relate to it, but it's interesting who it hits and when.
Man, I love that. The words matter, and how do you understand something except through that vocabulary of it and get everybody on the same page of it? So I love that. Jeff, give me a little bit of your response to that one.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle is great, and I love the term, Sherpa. And there's so many things that it is about that guidance and reassurance if you find yourself feeling these things. And I think there's two spots to it, and you touched on it a second ago, Johnny. One was just normal self-doubt, a little bit of fear, right? What's the difference between fear and then true imposter syndrome? And I think one of those, that's going to depend on the external criteria that hits you as you begin to advance, move up, or follow into certain things. So as that negative as that negative criteria hits you, what's your response to that? And in some cases, I truly believe it has everything to do with, okay, do I have a sense of belonging? Do I have a sense of representation? And I know I'm supposed to be here. This is just the tough part. Versus, okay, full on, I've been exposed through this tough part of what's going on. Now, two things happen. One is, who can I talk to about this? And that's huge, because if you sit there and feel like I'm completely on my own, now I got to muscle through this, I think it doesn't leave people with a lot of options. It's like scorched earth. I was right, and here we go. Or now, how do I mitigate all the things that, because we want those opportunities. We want those good things to come our way. But then there's two things that happen. One is you have this carrying sense of, I don't deserve what I just got. And then the second one is, okay, man, it got really tough. Do I have the skills to continue to mitigate through that? And I think that's where two things happen. One is representation through somebody else that's been there with a similar story that doesn't carry the same, it's a slightly different version of your story, but it's something similar. And then secondly, it is, okay, I can compartmentalize that. And most of us that end up with some of these skills, whether it's that entrepreneurial spirit or more of a drive or whatever it is, you have to have some form of compartmentalizing what that is so that you can respond to it. And I think that's what's kind of been lacking, is what is the response to that criteria if and when it arises? Because that's the tough parts. That's when it comes up. And I think those are the biggest things to offer, is coping mechanisms, skills, stories, right? War stories. Oh yeah, went through that, been there, done that. Here's how I responded to that, or here's what I learned out of how I could leverage what I thought was a hindrance. Turned out it's a skill. It's a bit of a superpower.
Yeah. I think there's so much about what you're saying. And one thing I heard in your response there was, to this definition, looking backwards. The definition is looking backwards. It's the inability to believe that the stuff I've already done, that I don't own it, I don't deserve it. And I think what you were talking about, it's easier to do in retrospect because you can do it slowly. You can just kind of look back and reflect a little bit. You go, man, I was doing that thing that I do, and you can kind of understand it. And the hardest part is doing it in the moment. That's when, that's a muscle that's going to be really difficult to build up for anyone that experiences imposter syndrome, is that live in the moment response where you can self-correct and not let it take you down some path. So
that's exactly right.
Maybe I like that definition because it's easier, because it's reflective, it's looking backwards. But that's my definition, and we're going to round robin that. So each episode we're going to do bring your definition for the day, and I think we'll learn a little bit more about the way the world looks at it, the way we look at it. I think words matter, Kyle, to your point. And so I'm excited to hear what you guys have to share about that. And, one thing, our funny little intro, all of the promises, one promise that I didn't say is, this is going to be a show of 3 grown men talking about their failings, right? Who doesn't want to tune into that?
Oh, man. Yeah.
Smoke them if you got them.
Yeah. So there's a couple things today. Our show is really going to be about why. Why, Kyle, did you say yes to coming on the podcast? Jeff, why did you say yes? And, I'm going to want a little bit more than because you asked me to. We can start there, sure, but I really want to kind of dig into the why for each of you. And, what are you trying to get out of it? What are you trying to give into it? What do you want to, pay forward, that sort of thing. And if you want to reference anyone that's kind of shared some things with you that has made an impact in your life, and why you're paying it forward, you want to give them a call out. I'm going to call somebody out when it comes to me, but I'd like to start with you guys, and Jeff, I'll start with you and Tell me why. Why are you here?
Oh man, I had a really amazing. I struggled with this for multiple reasons, which again we'll deep dive into most of that. But I was lucky enough to end up with a mentor pseudo early in my career, and where I was a middle manager, and his name was Charlie. I'm just going to put that out there. If he ends up seeing this, he'll know exactly who he is.
Charlie.
But yeah, just how to boil down what was actually needed into some of the most fundamental things ever to simplify how to navigate what this was. And then also him sharing that with me from his own standpoint. And it was so funny because he was just such the non-prototypical leader. And I'll never forget him. I mean, Hawaiian shirt, dunks on, jeans, hats, tatted up, shaved head. And it was, and I know people were looking at him like, what is going on here? But he had the highest retention rate out of any leader I've ever had. He gave so much opportunity and so much grace in so many other situations. And I finally got to get with him one day, and I was like, what is it? Where am I missing this? And why do I feel like this? And the wisdom that he was able to impart to me, I want to impart into others about just how simple some of this is, but at the same time, how to deal with and navigate those things so that you can go accomplish those really big things. And it's not that you're not going to feel them. It's just you're going to have the tools and the skill set and the response mechanisms to navigate. And that's the difference. That's my why, is sort of paying it back, because I was lucky enough to have a mentor. And I know there's guys out there like me or like us or whoever that need they don't, that voice. It might be tough to get from your leader. It might be tough to get at home, whatever it is. But just to normalize it, number one, and number two, give you the tools to navigate and move on.
Man, shout out to Charlie. That really is an incredible story.
He's my why. I can be a Charlie to anybody, ever. That's my goal.
Well, Kyle, tell us a little bit about your why, man. What's driving you here?
Well, first of all, you're awesome and you're my friend, and it's hard to turn down a conversation with you. So that's kind of an easy answer. We've known each other a long time, and you kind of given me periodic updates about the work you were doing in this area, and I was super honored to be invited. And there's a lot of reasons why I found it interesting. I wrestle with this concept a lot, and also I just think it's a really interesting thing to dissect, because it actually isn't just a career thing; it's a life thing. I'm a father of 4 little kids, 15 years married. And I experienced this in so many areas, but the biggest driver, I think, for me is I grew up in a very, not to make it a cry session about me, but, I grew up in a very traumatic way. Alcoholic, narcotics officer dad who had PTSD, bipolar mother. I grew up in literal squalor, for portions of my life. And, and you can go one of two ways typically in that situation. And one of them is really bad. And the other can be this strive and achieve thing that I referred to earlier. And I definitely have that. But the problem with it is that I'm very extreme in that way. And some of it is, as much as I want to achieve in my life and be successful, some of it is running away, from that past. And anytime I fail, failing is a great learning. We all know that. We talk about it. The obstacle is the way. And I truly believe that. But there's also this part of me psychologically, which I've had to work through, which is if I don't achieve, then I'm back in the trailer park. I'm back in squalor. I'm just, back to being white trash like I was. And so what happens is I also have a lot of interests. Like, I kind of accidentally got into a cybersecurity and technology career when I found out my guitar money wasn't going to pay my rent when I moved to Nashville, and I but I got into tech, and I kind of got addicted to the climb and to achieving and learning new things, and I have that impulse, and I'm a stand-up comedian, I'm a podcaster, I'm a writer. I'm hopefully getting a book published next year. Like, I do all these things, but what happens when you have so many interests in things, and it's not an arrogant thing. I don't know why, but I excel and I learn how to do these things very quickly. But then you go so fast, and then you turn around and you feel like a pirate on a plank, like you're walking the plank and you're above the water, and you're just like, you spent so much time thinking about the climb, and then whatever it is, whether it's a big obstacle, some kind of experience that causes that syndrome to kick in, and all of a sudden you look around and the sharks are swimming beneath you, and you're so far in though you can't go back, and that's where I often find myself. Like, I'll do comedy. I did comedy for years, and I had a moment where I was like, what am I doing? Like, I was getting booked, I was getting paid, and I have my movie podcast, it grows all the time, and we have a very loyal but it's just like, all of a sudden it's like, what am I doing? Like, why do I do this to myself? How do I get so far in and not question my abilities until it's way too late? And it's, and it's like, I should have asked this question at the beginning. Can I do this? But that never crosses my mind. And so imposter syndrome, when you talk about it with me, is very much like it kicks in later, and it can be very detrimental, because I have overlooked a lot of great things and made rash decisions in my life, because that syndrome clouded my mind enough to where I said, you didn't actually achieve those things. It's not just it's you didn't. Like, I'll tell myself, like, you didn't. The only reason you have a career is because you're lucky. Like, because you can talk, you have a mouth. And if it wasn't for your mouth, you would still be selling electronics to people, even though you don't own a microwave or a TV, which is what I was doing when I played guitar. I sold TVs, and I did not own a TV. I was like, yeah, that's a good one. I think it's 9K. Yeah, go ahead. It's one of those 9K TVs. I feel in a deep way, because I've made bad decisions in my life. Like, I've given up on things, and the good news is I've picked up on them later and have been able to regain that momentum. But it's a big problem to have to stop and start in things that I'm good at and have seen success in, and only to question myself to the point of, you shouldn't do this anymore. And so that's why when you talked to me about it, it was very interesting to me, because I've not only experienced the thought process of it, I've experienced the negative effects of letting it actually affect my abilities. And, I'm a big dreamer, and dreaming is important to me, and being creative is really important to me. But I personally got tired at one point in my life, and things are going well now. But years ago, I got tired of getting in my own way because of this concept.
Yes,
man, there's so much I want to unpack in that. But the first thing I'll say is, if you're listening, hit subscribe. Make sure you check back in with us, because if you have the opportunity to hear some of the jokes that Kyle brings to the table about his dad, but his aunt, that's the one. That's the money right there. It comes in grandma's cancer medicine. That's come back.
Yeah.
If you're listening, come back and hear more stories of that. But it's funny, you mentioned something that I kind of see is really true about imposter syndrome, and it's how paradoxical it is.
Yeah.
That a lot of people that have it, high performing, we love positive, we love big, but we're also depressive and sad and angry, and we hate ourselves. It's like there's such a duality, and it lives on such extreme ends of the spectrum. And we all experience it, of course, a little bit differently. But, man, some of what you just said, I hope really resonates with listeners, because it really resonates with me. And it is that duality. It's not a either or, it's a both and it confuses the shit out of people, because our friends and family see us doing these things, and then we try to talk to them about what we're feeling on the inside. And it's the duck parable, ducks gliding along on the top of the water, but underneath it's doing this. And I know this is bad for audio, but it's my feet kicking. I'm making the motion with my fingers, feet kicking.
Well,
but it's like chaos underneath. But Jeff, I see you nodding your head. I know you're agreeing on that.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle, you touched on it too. It's sometimes you get that far in, and then all of a sudden, that's where you're like, did I stick myself out way too far with my capabilities, belief in myself, skill set, maybe even I wouldn't even call it over promising, but you knew you were there, and then headwinds, waves, whatever analogy you want to happen, And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I captained myself into this. now what skills do I need, or am I missing potentially to continue on this? And then, because and then you touch on it, Johnny, it's like, we love that we can generate a really positive atmosphere and bring people with us too on those ideas, whether it's our family, whether it's our friends, whether it's colleagues, coworkers. And then we bring people in and we start moving forward. And then, it does get tough. The time when it really hits you is when those challenges start to show up and those headwinds start to show up. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay. It's not that you're an imposter in that moment. It is how do I action the rest of this realistically without it being an emotional response. And like you, Kyle, I mean, there's almost a moment where there's a moment to sabotage, almost scorch the earth, like, whoops, out of here.
Yep.
Right. Versus, okay, I'm going to stick in it. I've got the long game here. Now what? I got to switch the strategy, because the inputs of what I thought I was doing to go long on this idea are starting to turn negative. So what does that mean? Where do we go from here? So yeah, it really resonates with me.
You use the term emotion, and there's so often, I've always believed that whoever has the least amount of emotion wins. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're planning, I mean, let your emotions sort of inflect whatever it is that you're doing, but don't be your feelings in a situation. And
right.
The problem sometimes with imposter syndrome is it's in the back of your head at all times, and it's an emotion. It's a feeling. It's a sense. And so, how difficult that is to not listen to that voice and let that voice take over. When it is an emotion, and it being sort of one of our core reactions is that emotional side of it. It is difficult. And, Kyle, you brought up one of the tenets of Stoicism, I believe, the
obstacle is the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pure Stoicism. And I think one of the things that I've struggled with so much is, what's the saying? It's that valor isn't the absence, or courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the presence of action, or it's action in the presence of fear. Something like that.
Yeah.
And so I think in scenarios like this, it's kind of the opposite. It's being able to quiet down. It's not the absence of that voice. That voice is omnipresent. It's the ability to manage your actions and your stances and your responses when you have those emotions going right in the moment. So, Jeff, that kind of riffed on what you were laying down there, but I think that's 100% it.
Yeah, and you get to those moments where I think with the obstacle thing and with the, when you face those, I think one of the problems is it's not something that's easy to parent, first of all, and to instill that kind of confidence in your kids. But it's like I know for me, I have viewed an obstacle as telling me the truth about who I am. And I've always kind of thought, oh, well, it's just because this is life telling me who I am. But really, those things are uncovering and developing truth about you. And you learn through those things. But, based on how you were parented or what you've experienced in society, and then this is probably why I've given up where I shouldn't have. It's like, oh, this is life telling me to stop. But it's not that. It's actually life is telling you to go, but just how to go, and, what levers to pull, and, where to put your resources. And, that is not an easy thing to learn, and it's not an easy thing to parent. So societally speaking, that's why so many people do hit obstacles and say, you know what, this is telling me the truth about who I am, when instead of looking at it as development.
Right. And Johnny, you used a good analogy, a muscle to build. Right. I think a lot of people can sit there and go, man, that I'm weak right here. And then the difference, I think, is staying in it and going, just stay in there and keep keep working that. And then the next thing you know, next time a similar obstacle comes up, you've built a different response to it. And then Kyle was raised very similar. A lot of like trauma in the past with alcohol. Other airline pilot father, very high functioning dad, to idolize really. And so, inside of those moments, I think to me, you're literally making a new connection into where your mind's going to go based on the obstacle versus what could have been. I need to react emotionally to avoid more pain, avoid more trauma, avoid more loss. Right. And to me, that's the shift.
Yeah. You guys are bringing up some incredible things. I haven't told my why yet, but before I do, I want to mention something that you guys were both talking about your backgrounds. My dad should have been a dream killer. He should have been the guy that tells me, you can't do that. He should have been a dream killer, because if you look at my dad's background, my dad lost his father. His father was in his 30s. My dad was a child when his father drank himself to death, basically. And he also had a mom that ran off and abandoned the family, and there was alcoholism, and it's a torrid story, but it happened to him. And so when I look at my life, I have kind of a storybook life in a lot of ways. I mean, I had a great family. Most of the kids I grew up with, they wanted to be around my family. Christmas time, it's December the 2nd, right now when we're recording this, and we're moving into the holiday season. And all my friends wanted to be a part of my family and be a part of my events because it was such a warm environment. But what I think I experienced was a little bit different. I experienced my dad's trauma through him. There's an incredible line, and it's the presence of an absence. The ability to see the presence of an absence. And my dad, there was a presence of an absence with him. It was something that I knew that he didn't have growing up, that he had missing. And the man did everything he could have, and he could have been a dream killer. But he never once was. It was always, you can have anything you want, you can do anything you want to do. But I experienced trauma kind of through him. And we're going to unpack that on, probably in a different episode, but I really wanted to take a second and talk about, since both of you guys kind of brought up some of the trauma, when I go back to, I really didn't have all that much trauma growing up. What I had was the presence of an absence. And I think part of my imposter syndrome was because, there was that father figure that wasn't there for my dad. Maybe it didn't get trained completely in him. And so some of that foundational stuff, he just wasn't able to arm me with. He was a great dad, good parent, is a good dad. He's still alive. But man, the presence of an absence is something that I saw growing up that I think has really been a part of my foundation. So, thank you guys for that feedback and just for those words and sharing as much as you did and open it up. And, I think, so my why, I was at, having Thai food with a friend. I was actually talking to this friend about potentially coming on to be a business coach for the company that I bought with two other partners. First time entrepreneur, man, triggers coming at me in every single direction. It was really a weird time in my life. And I think, I'd always had imposter syndrome, but man, you want to talk about putting a spotlight on it, suddenly become, be in a situation where that term leader that you never took on completely, now you have to be that. You have to have, those responsibilities, and you can't just, be an individual contributor. And so as an owner, I was sitting down with somebody that was going to be a business coach, Kris Kelso, 2 Ks, kskelso.com. Go check him out if you want to learn more about imposter syndrome. That dude is my source. And Jeff, you mentioned mentors, and I would say, in a lot of ways, I see Kris as a peer in so many ways, but then I see him as a mentor in so many other ways. And especially when it comes to imposter syndrome, because we were sitting down over Thai food, and I was explaining something I was experiencing at work at this new role that I was in. And he asked a question, and the question was, have you ever heard of imposter syndrome? And my response was no, but I haven't. And just by him saying those two words, imposter syndrome, it's like there were so many fuzzy edges of my life that came into focus quickly and suddenly. And I went that day and went and started researching videos, people speaking about it. It was like 10 years of therapy in one lunch conversation in 2 words. The question, have you ever heard of imposter syndrome? Yeah. And it kicked me down a path that, my why now is because the time that I've spent learning how to cope with it, how to deal with it, I'm building a coaching program around it, and I'm writing a book on it that is a really specific take on how to manage and how to harness. I use the term harness. How to harness imposter syndrome for betterment, for good. And Jeff, you touched on that a little bit, man. And we'll dig into that piece a little bit. You even used I have the 4 R's in the coaching program, and I won't go into them now, but you brought up one of the R's early on, and it really is something that I think, somebody helped me. They gave me a framework. They gave me an understanding, and they just twisted the lens just a little bit. Mm-hmm. But my entire world kind of came into focus in a really quick way. And so I want to give that to, hopefully there's one person that I can say that's listening to this silly podcast of ours, and they go, I get it now. I understand myself a little bit better. That's my why.
Yeah, man. That's awesome.
Love it. That's sick. Love it.
And I think too, show of hands, the 3 of us, I mean, could either of the 3 of us imagine where you're sitting today, given what you experienced coming up? Not a million years. So you mentioned the duality too. There's a part of me that's, this is gravy. And then there's another part of me that's terrified. But like you, I had that moment with that mentor where it was just like, snapped it into focus almost instantly. And then, not just imposter syndrome, but I think all things, and what do they call it now? I think there's actually a degree for it, industrial organizational psychology, right? These factors that a lot of us, I love that you're writing a book on it too. And these factors that are all out there now that can be quantified and coached and normalized. Right. And you'd be really surprised too once somebody can share their story, and it's like, oh wow, there's more of us. Yeah. But we don't share that openly a lot. And I think other people make assumptions too, like, oh, you must have had it made. Here you sit as a business owner or an entrepreneur or a comedian or, whatever, and finger quote successful. And it's like, man, you only knew, like you said, the duck on the water. You only knew what was going on under there.
Yeah, there was an event I was at, and it was like a sort of a graduation ceremony. It was for a program that's part of the Nashville Technology Council that I'm involved in. And I had a speaking piece. So I'm up on the spotlight. I'm getting that piece of me fed that needs that sort of validation and that interaction. I'm up on stage. I'm in the limelight. I'm feeling all those things, but at the same time, that duality, that paradoxical side of it is, I don't belong up here. What the hell do I think I'm doing up here talking about this? And so I was speaking to someone that was one of our trainers that was a part of the program, and one of her staff was there, and she started asking a couple questions, and she was saying, that was really great. I think I'd given a speech. And I asked her, have you ever heard of imposter syndrome? And she literally said, and I found this fascinating, but she literally said, yes, but you don't know much about it, do you? And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, you don't have it. And I'm like, oh, contraire, mon frere. Let me explain this to you and how it works. And it was really just a great conversation. And you know, I see that a lot of people see the masks, a lot of what I'm working on, masks, even the logo for the show is the masks that we wear. And those masks can be powerful, and they can maybe give people the wrong idea of where we're at. Maybe we, you know, sometimes we don't talk about these things. We talked about, there's something, I think it's called shared ignorance is the term. I'll have to look it up. But you know, it's where we're basically feeling something. Mm-hmm. And we're going, well, no one else feels this. This is just me. This is me in my crazy little head. And when we start talking about it, and when you hear other people talk about it, suddenly you start seeing, yeah, we're not as alone as we think we are. And there's a lot of people out there that are experiencing these same feelings that we have. As a matter of fact, there's a name for it. It's called imposter syndrome. Right. And man, those are powerful moments. And when we can feel that lens tightening, that little twist of the lens, and suddenly we see everything.
Yeah. Well, and it's not a disqualifier all of a sudden, those feelings. It's like, oh, now what? It's like, okay, now that's what we talk about. It's how to mitigate, how to deal with them. And, you know, I had to, you know, went through a lot of work too. And, you know, some of these things that we feel and experience, the term, was were formed in a crucible very early. Mm-hmm. They are not going away. That's the first thing to normalize. Those feelings are not going away. How you respond to them is what's going to change. And
wow, you know, in the book that I'm writing, early on, intro level, I talk a little bit about how a lot of what's being talked about with imposter syndrome, there's this sort of curative approach. You know, I want to help you. It's all positive. It's all good. And it's all valuable. You know, it's how you can, and I'm going to pick on my hero, Kris Kelso, my mentor, the guy that introduced me to imposter syndrome. He's got a book called, Overcoming the Imposter. And, I think I'm page 30 something. But when I look at overcoming the imposter, I have this reaction, and when I start talking about it, I actually kind of feel bad, because when I start talking about it, it's almost like I'm banging on the guy that introduced the concept to me. It's like the guy that introduced it to me, I'm sort of disagreeing with some of his premise. And what I realize is, well, no, it's very valuable. That's a great point of view. But where I really found more value, more worth, was it's not about overcoming it, because that's never going to happen. Stop trying. It's not going to work. This is going to be your dark passenger forever.
Nailed it.
And that's part of the work that I'm doing, that really, you know, there's good news and bad news. And the good news is there's silver bullets and silver linings and all this other stuff. The bad news is this ain't going away. This is with you. And no matter how hard we try, the work that we're doing, all we're going to do is just make it a little more efficient to get to better results, maybe have a little less impact, a little less damage along the way. But it's not this is a you know, it's an aspirin, not a vaccine. It's just going to help some. So, I think I lost consciousness just a second ago when I started talking about that. So I'm going to stop talking for a second, and one of you guys are going to have to pick up, lay something down.
No, it was great. No, that was a really great consciousness losing exercise then. Yeah. I wish I lost consciousness so like lucky.
That. Most of the times I've ever lost consciousness, normally there's like there's a slur involved, or this is a much better way to lose consciousness. I'm taking notes over on the side, by the way, and I wish I would have started doing this earlier, but there's so much to unpack, and it's funny because I actually thought about when we were talking about the creation of this thing. What are we going to talk about for, if we do it once a month in 1 year, we got 12 episodes. What the hell are we going to talk about? And what's funny is a lot, the facets that we can go down as we start unpacking this, and as the framework of this podcast continues to grow, and as we start getting better at the way, we kind of riff off of one another. When it really starts locking down, I think we'll be able to get granular on things that I'm looking forward to learning about your experience, Kyle, and your experience, Jeff, and seeing things in a way that I've never seen before, or seeing, I want to see with your eyes. And that's an amazing feeling to be able to do that in conversation with people on something that, man, the society does not conspire to us talking about this. This is something that it's three grown men talking about their feelings. Man,
yeah.
Hopefully we'll get some listeners, but
I'm getting some feelings just thinking about it.
It sounded dirtier than
yeah, I think it did.
It's not that.
I meant
it's not that kind of podcast, Kyle.
I meant like three grown men talking about their emotions type feelings.
Well, here's my newly formed response to that. I think you're here for the wrong reason.
Oh.
Kyle, can we talk about your motivators?
Yeah.
Tell me about the relationship with your mother.
Yeah. Is that a Freud impression? I love it.
Something tells me we're gonna trot that one out on occasion.
Yeah.
We may have to we got AI somewhere. We can bring Freud in and talk about it.
Yeah.
That brings up a great kind of segue. We're gonna be looking for guests. We've actually got a couple that we're talking to right now. Just to set expectations to anyone that's listening to this, both of our listeners. And I think my mom's one of them. Kyle, I don't know if your wife's gonna pick it up. Maybe mine will. Jeff, I don't know if you've got listeners, but
my wife hasn't been to one of my comedy shows in 9 years. So if you want to know where we're at with that.
Oh yeah.
She gets the comedy show every day.
Yeah. And she thinks it's funny. Let me tell you, she thinks it's a riot.
Yeah, it's the same joke every day.
Well, you guys, you mentioned wives real quick. I mean, and my wife struggles with this. I mean, we literally over dinner before I came down here, she was telling me a little bit of part of her story, and she's ended up being very successful with us. So there's another interesting take on this too, which is the lens of who we are through our wives, what they see, right? Because they see us working, trying, moving through these things. They also understand those, because we more than likely share things with them about ourselves or what they may be going through too. So, I think that's another important lens is how do they see us?
I was about to start talking about guests that we can have on. I don't know about you guys, but spouses. I mean, boy, talk about some of the stories my wife could tell. But Jeff, you brought up organizational psychology. One of the best conversations I've ever heard about this is Adam Grant, my favorite organizational psychologist. I couldn't name another, in fairness, but I do love his work, and Scott Galloway, who I am a fanboy of. They have a conversation, and it's actually, you can find it on YouTube. I think it's part of the Prof G podcast. And it's just the two of them talking about imposter syndrome. And I found it so informative. Maybe we can throw a link somewhere out where anyone that wants to see that can jump on in. But when we go back to some of the things, just to set some expectations for again, both of our listeners, we'll start off with the definition of what is imposter syndrome. every show I'd like for us to bring a little nuance, and we'll see how long we can keep that up and how long that's going to make sense. We'll have a topic, and I think, the topic for today was why. What was your why? Why are you on the podcast? What is it you're looking to accomplish or, get or give? I think we're going to do some interviews. Initially, what I want us to do, and just to let everybody know, we're going to be interviewing each other. And so we're going to kind of keep a real broad list of questions, and I'll get interviewed by Kyle and Jeff. Kyle and I are going to interview Jeff. Jeff and I are going to interview Kyle, et cetera, et cetera. And so the first, the next 3 episodes are really going to be us interviewing one another. And then the plan is we'll be bringing guests on. Would love to have Adam Grant. Would love to have Scott Galloway. I know those are highly expensive, but, a gal can dream. But I'm looking forward to that piece of it, and really kind of digging in. So if you're listening and you would like to be a guest, reach out. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can also find us on Facebook, the Impodsters. We have the filed trademark for that, guys, and that's something.
That's wonderful.
A few people out there that have a story like of you overcoming, and then people need to hear those stories because it normalizes. You meet them where they are, and then you give them a new perspective, a new outlook on what leadership and success can look like and where it can come from.
Charlie, if he's still knocking around out there and we get him on, I know I'm going to be reaching out to Kris Kelso, and he's already said he'd do an interview with us. And I think, man, this guy's going to blow your mind with some of the ideas he has on this. And he spent a lot of time. He's got a TED Talk that he recently gave that was amazing. You can find it on TEDx Old Hickory on the TEDx site. But guys, I'm excited. I think we're far enough into the conversation that there's so much more meat on the bone. I'm really looking forward to the next couple of episodes and us digging more into this. I think, figuring out a way to maybe wrap us up. And I was thinking through what can we do to really kind of put the nail in either the pretty box or the coffin, whichever we have here. But I came up with a tagline. I think I've got a tagline.
Do it. All
right. Jeff, you ready? All right, man. Hey guys, this has been fantastic. And I'm Johnny Anderson, and I'm certain about doubt.
Okay.
You like?
I like it. I have nothing. I don't have a tagline like that, but that's great. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much. This has been an incredible conversation. What a fantastic start to what I believe is going to be an incredible journey. I'm really looking forward, like I said, to digging in more. Listeners, if you're out there, subscribe, like, share, tell your friends, tell your family. If you know someone that's experiencing imposter syndrome, if you yourself are experiencing imposter syndrome, if you think you may be experiencing imposter syndrome, join us on this fun, wacky little journey, and make sure to tell your friends about the Impodsters. It's a show about imposter syndrome. Thanks for joining, guys.
Heck yeah. Thanks for having me, Johnny.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.